And it's not just the bream that I'm picking off this morning, but it's a lot of fun either way. These bream and the bass are competing over this little thing. Here you go, buddy. Take a look at that. And they are just so soft and work so hard in the water for you. I'm going to keep going, and at some stage I've got to pull over and start talking to you about how to use these things and why they're so good. Yep, again. Oh! I've been loving this thing all morning. It's been heaps of fun. I've just been like hopping, dropping, installing this thing down on the ground, and they're coming up to grab it. But I'm actually after a bass. The bass season's just open. I'm out here trying to get a bass, so I'm going to see. I reckon this log's going to have the bass sitting on it that I'm after. Yep, got it. That's what we want. Yeah. Oh, it's a giant bream again. Thought it was a bass. Mate, these bream cannot get enough of this lure this morning. I'm after bass. I want to get a nice big bass. Good morning, Gino.
Hi, Daddy.
Hey guys. I'm on. I got one. I got a fish.
Oh, you got one.
Yeah. How cool. Look.
I think there's a fish in it.
I got a fish, mate.
What is it?
How good is this? I'm FaceTiming. I caught myself a bream.
Dad,
Yeah.
I stayed in my bed all night.
You stayed in your bed all night, buddy. I know. You're a good boy. How good?
Where are
You're interrupting my lure review, but that's all right. That's perfect.
Sorry.
No, I'm smashing them, so it's all good. I'm testing out these new DAIWA lures.
Hey, Taylor, tell me. Are they good?
Yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah.
Out there?
Yes, mate. You and me are going to go fishing this weekend too. Yep. Oh, again. Another one. Oh well. I reckon it's going to have to be another video where I get these bass, because the bream are just climbing all over it. They're just competing, and the bream are coming out first. The sun's getting up a little bit higher, so the bream are happy to sit a little bit higher in the water. I reckon the bass might be sitting underneath them. But what I might do, I might just pull over and go through the range of these new bait junkie plastics that DAIWA have just released and show you some tips on how I like to fish them. Too much fun though. Well, I'm just going to take a break from the fishing for a little bit and take you through this new range of soft plastics that DAIWA's just released. It's called the Bait Junkie range, and I've been fishing for bream and bass this morning. The bream have been climbing all over this little 2.5 inch grub, and you can see how soft they are. The plastic in these things is probably the softest plastic that I've used, and you can see it's this super stretchy material. They've called it Elastamax, and it's got a scent to it, and it also floats, and there's some aspects to this plastic that I'm going to talk you through that I think is really going to help it get onto a load of fish. And they've got a whole range. So before we get into the design features of these things, let me just take you through the range. So they've got grubs, and this is a 2.5, and they've also got like a 4-inch grub. They've got some amazing colour patterns. One of my favourites is bloodworm and this chartreuse UV that I've been using this morning. And then they've got like a mud bloodworm as well. There's a heap of colours. If you want to check the colours out, you'll probably have to get onto their website. They've got some bigger jerk shad, so that's a 5 and a 7 that I've got here. So they're the little 5s, which would be good for flathead, trevally, and these 7s probably more for jewfish or bigger flathead, fishing out offshore for snapper for sure. But they've also got these minnow range, and the minnows come in a 2.5 inch. I might give you a look at that. So tiny little 2.5 inch, which is going to be bomb for like bream, flathead, bass fishing. I'm going to fish with that this morning. And then they've also got a 3.2, which is, I reckon, is going to be good for mangrove jack as well, casting around the pontoons and up the back of the estuaries once these jacks start firing in the next couple of months. So I'll give you a better look at these actually, because it's the tails on these, I'm pretty happy with these. A lot of it comes down to the action that you can get with the tail when you're burning these things around pontoons for jacks. And I really like a tail that comes at right angles right off the back of that plastic like that. So you can see that there. I think these are going to definitely work on the jacks. And there's a couple of different ways that you can rig them. So I'll go through that really quickly. It's actually on the back here. On each of the packets, it shows you the 2 different ways that you can rig them. And this whole weedless presentation, like offset weedless worm hook presentations, that's just become really popular now, is skip casting and chasing big flathead and being able to fish in heavy cover. It shows you on the back how to do it, and even the size of the hook that you want to buy that matches up perfectly with each bait. So when you're looking in the shops, make sure you check that out if you're trying to match it up with different jig heads and things like that. And I've sort of noticed this morning as well, fishing with them, because they're super soft, you really need a high grade, like a jig head. You don't want to go with a cheaper jig head with these things. And if you can go a lighter gauge, like I'm just running, take a look at that. I'm just running a really light gauge TT with the keeper there. That's probably the best way to go. A jig head that's got that kind of feature to it with a keeper, and the lightest gauge you can go on those little small grubs, I reckon that's the way to go for bream and flathead and bass and that sort of thing. Obviously, if you're going out offshore with these big 7 inches, you've probably got to, go for a bit heavier grade if you're chasing snapper and dewy for sure. So it's just something that I sort of picked up this morning fishing it. Look at that. You can see like that's holding it out horizontal, and they just fall straight away. They're just super stretchy and soft. But yeah, just pushing it on and getting it right, you've really got to have a lighter gauge hook. Just makes it a lot easier putting them on. But anyway, let's go through the design features on each of them, and we'll start with the smaller ones. So obviously with these minnows, they've got that little paddle tail, they've got a rib section, and they've got this sort of 2 colour stuff. And these little chartreuse UVs, they glow like crazy. I saw them last night in the car. But the little grub, and I think this is going to set them apart from a lot of the grubs that are out there on the market at the moment. The appeal for me with these little grubs is that they're, well, you can see it just really well in there. The tail on it is just a little bit more broad, and because they're super soft, they get going real quick, work super hard, like the little paddle tail as it goes when you're only winding it super slow on a roll, which is perfect for a bream. That just gets going really well. And the other thing that it's going to do, because it's a floating plastic, once it sits on the bottom, and this is how I've been picking my bream up this morning, once it sits on the bottom, the tail comes up and just sits and moves really well in the slightest movement. I've got a little run out tide here, and that tail has just been working perfectly at rest. And so the bream have been honing in on it, seeing it and grabbing it. I reckon it's because this tail is sort of sitting up off this muddy bottom that I've got in this system. So that's one of the elements of these plastics that I really like. A floating plastic for bream and bass when you're fishing down the bottom, I think makes a hell of a difference. Just getting that plastic up off the bottom. Even Flathead as well, I reckon that it's a real appeal that some of these floating plastic materials just sort of have that advantage. Alright, so there's the little minnows there that are ribbed. There's a ribbing on these grubs as well, up through the body, which just helps with a little bit more pulse and thing as it goes through the water. And they've got locator lines on them. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see that in the video, but there's a little locator to help you run it onto the hook, because they're so soft. That just helps you eye it in as you use your fingers and massage the plastic on and push it on with your fingers sort of together on the way down. That little locator is really good. The jerk shads have got a belly slit, so if you have a look in there, they've got a belly slit which helps with that weedless presentation, or just having the hook be able to move when you set it so that the plastic isn't getting in the road and it's just sliding around a little bit more. And then it's got a dorsal slit there as well, so if you're skip casting these for mangrove jack or barra in against tight cover, you can just hide the EWG, like the worm hook, you can hide it up the top there. So they are truly weedless, and then when the barra grabs it, they just compress it and out comes the hook. So these are little like twin tails, and even these twin tails are a bit more broad than what you'll see on most plastics, I reckon, of the same kind of design. And that allows it just to get a little bit more action in the water, especially on the drop. And the other one that I haven't really spoken on too much, like they're going to be great for offshore, and they're super durable in the sense that they're really stretchy. They are really soft though, so I mean I've been fishing them this morning really hard in this cover, ripping them through and that sort of thing, and they've held up pretty well. I'd say there's probably, you know, some lures that are tougher on the market in terms of total durability, but in terms of softness and their action when you're fishing them, those little grubs, they're fantastic, really impressive. Alright, so I'll just see if I can whip out some of these smaller ones for the mangrove jack, and I'll talk you through some of the appeal for these. So this is the Wagasaki colour, and you can see how they come in the pack. So they've got these little plastic stencils that they sit inside, and that just holds them really well so that they're not going to melt out as bad. And you don't want to put these with other plastics. A lot of these super stretchy plastics, they'll melt out other plastics. So at a guess, I reckon this material will probably do it as well. So keep them out of the sun, put them back in their little stencil packet, hang on to that, don't just throw them in your tackle box, because the material's so soft that you don't want to go kinking the tail or the body of the plastic. So take a look at this. It's got a little dorsal slit there where the hook can sit if you're running it weedless. It's got like a little rib section through the middle there that just frees up the tail a little bit more, and then that paddle tail on the back. You can see how crazy soft that is. So that's just going to go mad when you're dragging it through the water. And then it's just got the front of it is actually pretty well designed to sit on a jig head. You can see that really flat nose on it. It's just been cut straight down, which I actually like that, because a lot of jig heads, they sit butt up flat against, you know, what is often like a rounded front of a bait, and then they don't really look all that natural when you get down to the detail of it. There's sort of gaps in the shape and the profile of the bait there, the silhouette, but they're going to sit perfectly on a little 3/8 of an ounce or a 1/4 ounce jig head. So they're going to sit really well, and that's going to look good in the water. So that's what I'd probably use, and I'll just show you that. I'll give you an example. These Demon series jig heads, these are the TT 30 3/8 ounce. So you can see that, that's what I mean. You want a good quality jig head, and if you're going for jacks, you need a decent gauge of hook as well. But because they're so soft, you've got to be really careful with the way that you massage them on to try and get it really straight. And then once you're pushing that on, if there's a bit of a keeper lead there, that's not too bad. There's a bit of keeper lead just in behind the neck of the plastic, that's going to hold it a little bit better. So you can see with the profile that just sits better. These jacks, these seasons now, like there's been a few seasons where everyone's been getting after them around pontoons. It's lots of little things that I think can make the difference when you start getting into pressured waters and fishing for these jacks. So I'm trying to fish with these painted jig heads with eyes as much as I can, bigger gauge hook, and you know, something new and different. Often that can make a difference. So anyway, there's the range. There's heaps of great colours, like I said. You've got to get online. Just get online and have a look at the colour range that they've got. They've also got some great diving lures that have arrived this year, like their double clutch range has just got bigger, and I think that's going to enter into the barra and the jack market more than what the smaller versions have. But I'll do a review on those in the coming weeks, and I'm going to be fishing those pretty hard. So if you haven't taken a look at Bait Junkie yet, there you go. There they are. They've got great big jerk shads. They've got grubs right the way through, from bream and bass all the way up to, you know, your freshwater stuff, bigger things there that you're going to be able to fish around reefs and stuff with. And then, yeah, they're really big jerk shads for offshore. All right, if you've got any questions, make sure you put some stuff in the comments there. I'd love to hear your comments and help answer any questions that you might have. And if you've been getting fish on these, let me know what you like, what your favourite colours are, because I bought a few that are my favourites. The grey Nomad Glow, I really like that. The bloodworm colours, I always love my pearls for mangrove jack and barra fishing and for flathead. But there's some great little UV chartreuse colours that in the water, boy, they look the goods. All right, thanks for watching. Get out there and give them a go, and I'll see you in the next video. Little buddy. Yep. Yep. Oh. Oh, look at this. I think I got some lip there. That's pretty sad. I got bass lip. I was trying to lift him up over the log. Talk about giving me some lip. The softest little bit of flesh there. See if I can get him. Oh, I hate that I've just ripped his lip.